Garmsh was given the keys no one else could touch. He was able to get in and out of rooms the rest of us could only see through glass squashed eyes, steam circles forming around our gaping mouths like Dickensian orphans at bakery windows. Garmsh was always beaming in this obnoxious way, especially when he walked out of room 312. It had no little view portals, so the rest of us were stuck with pressed ears, listening for clues to its secrets. The noises were of untamed liquid and blocky air. There were cries of delight and squawks of trilled grimace. Whatever circus of mysteries was conducted in there, we all wanted in. We would get Garmsh to give us a taste of its interior, whether by voluntation or gimme gimme. The lady at the desk told me my face was in a magazine they had in the waiting room. That's where she'd seen me before. The magazine was called The Next Targets and seemed to be some kind of hunting magazine. I flipped to page 32 as the sallow and butterscotch-breathed secretary coaxed. There I was, a full-page spread, with a giant laser-induced dot on my forehead. The caption was in size 82 font and said, "This guy gets it next." I asked more about the magazine. Who dropped it off here? Is this a regular feature of their waiting room stack? The woman at the desk, who said her name was Lawrence of Arabia, a full first name, she insisted, would not tell me. She said the magazines were governed under the same confidentiality agreement as that which protects the patients from civic accessibility and degradatory rituals. The magazines are protected, I parroted dumbly. Then Lawrence of Arabia shut her little window. Written on the tiny glass in a smeary sort of crayon was the message, "No more talking today." I went back to the busted plush seat, which let out a last gasp as I sat, and stared at my face with the glowing red mandala of vicious intent. It shone insidiously on my tricolor printed forehead and gave me the squirms. I flipped the page and saw a calendar. It was immediately clear that it was meant to predict when every featured figure in the magazine would get it. I saw that my name was the only one on the current date. Someone had even circled it on the page in a smeary red crayon, similar enough to the message scrawled on Lawrence of Arabia's administrative speak shield for me to wonder if she herself had done it. And if she did, was it meant as a warning, or did it betray eager anticipation? We were told we'd all be given a chance to present our ideas for our new religions. The most persuasive among us would be given a sizable grant. It would be enough to fund the construction of several houses of worship, or whatever use we had in mind for them, as well as pay the highest-ranking heads for years. I was to present third. The first two religions presented were intriguing, but did not seem very different from well-known cults that had operated in the area for decades. One had to do with climbing under rocks and accessing trance states through prolonged naps, or sleeping fits, as the presenter called them. This was to embellish the activity of the human lizard brain and unlock core memories from a time in which gigantic lizards ruled as gods, with most people mostly employed as servants and pets. The second described a world in which people were sewn into walls, imbuing houses with enough souls to act as regenerative sites for those who were allowed to live in them. The presenter explained that breathing in souls and having one's pores penetrated by departiculated spirits could prolong one's life many times over. Who is elected to be sewn into the walls and who given the opportunity to live indefinitely comes down to an elaborate trial of labors of the spirit, which proves who is worthy of extended vitality and who is put on earth to serve as a battery for these special people. I felt my religion had a great shot, but was nervous all the same. I'm not a practiced public speaker, and my presentation did not have the multimedia component the previous two did. I did not have 100 lizards to drop from the ceiling, for example, like the guy who advocated sleeping under rocks, nor did I have a wall sample that opened up to reveal several happy volunteers sewn inside of it. I had no props at all, no slides, no spectacle. All I had was a vision which I knew to be granted to me from a force and power beyond the borders of human consciousness. I began my talk humbly and then went right into the vision, saying I would not waste their time with eccentricities, however imaginative, like the other two had. I then painted a picture with such unwavering detail I was sure they couldn't deny its veracity. It may be that what I pitched could not rightly be called a religion, but the seed of one. It boiled down to a way of cooperative living that was necessary to avoid the extinction of the species, which would appear as if it were brought about by natural causes, but would in fact be an act of retribution sought by those numinous authorities beyond us, who no longer wished us to continue our existence. It all came down to giving the most repulsive people on the planet more hugs. This the metaphysical authorities made clear in the augury granted to me. The more disgusting physically, personally, holistically the individual was, the more infection needed to be shown them. We had done a poor job of performing this essential task, tending to avoid people who smelled horrific or look terribly diseased or seem frightening to be near. I emphasized that I did not personally think we were wrong for behaving this way, but the mysterious sources of my vision were fixated on this counterintuitive behavior. I then thanked them for their time and left to wait in the lobby with the others who had already presented. Later, I found out that the grant was awarded to the lizard guy. I guess the spectacle of dropping the lizards from the ceiling won the judges over. It made me worry because I knew the vision I saw was going to come to pass if we did not radically change our behavior towards one another, whether anyone believed me or not. We knew that behind the door of 312 was a power which had granted Garmsh visions of how human beings were really meant to live. Garmsh told us what had been revealed to him after we cornered him and did a little torture. He said he was informed we all had to be kinder to the more repulsive and repugnant among us. Not the famous ones who are well off already, but more lowly sorts who walk among us and tend to send people away from them. We were to walk close and embrace them, give hug, give nurturing language, tell them, you are a glorious example of the sapienized species. You deserve a long and loving life. Things like that. We asked if he'd been hugging a lot of trash people himself, and he said yes. We couldn't believe that's all that went on in there, so he said, fine, take the keys, see for yourself. We all shouldered in and flicked on the lights. The room was empty, and pure conference room, no different than any other. We all felt duped. But then there was a purple rumbling and a grabbing of the mind with bright, shining orange energy. We were scolded by a mouth we could not see for sneaking in like children peeking at holiday gifts, and since we did, we must perform a task. We were to save the life of a man wrongly marked for death. A magazine appeared at our feet then, called This Guy Gets It Next. It flipped itself to page 32, and we saw a guy's face with a large laser target on his forehead. We were then sent backwards out the open door, which promptly slammed shut after us. I was tired of running from assassins. Ever since I left the office that morning, unseen assailants had been taking shots at me. I never discovered why. As far as I could tell, whoever appeared in that magazine, and when their date was called, was either arbitrary or determined by inaccessible authorities, which essentially amounts to the same thing. I'd finally been cornered in an alley in which two brick buildings joined in a sort of corner, which seemed like an architectural mistake to me, but what do I know? I spun around, panting, and there before me was a tall man dressed in a similar style to that of the Zodiac Killer. He had a flashlight shaped like a lizard's mouth, which shot a merciless beam between my eyes. As such, I could not see the group when they snuck behind the Zodiac look-alike and tackled the giant to the ground. Not until they were all rolling on the putrid pavement. I saw immediately that they were not trying to harm this hooded assassin, but only hugged him, saying things like, "You are a nice soft thing on earth. You are as vulnerable as the clouds. You can sing like a kind grandmother. You may rub socks against your cheeks and think of kittens." Things like that. This seemed to pacify the brute completely. In fact, it became clear he was crying with heaving sobs. The others walked away then, despite me calling out after them, begging them to wait so I could thank them. One turned for just a moment, pointed at the man on the ground, and said, "Hug." So I did. I did it even though I hated that man, because only moments earlier he was going to kill me without remorse, for no good reason at all. We then rose together, he and I, and went out onto the street, finding more people of all kinds, which we knew had been avoided by their fellows most of their life. It was as if they had a bright orange beam shining on their foreheads, which only we and those like us could see. This plague of affection spread, beginning with the most repulsive people we could find and spreading out to those slightly less repugnant than them, and so on, until even people who weren't really that rotten at all received affection from complete strangers. Behind the doors of room 312, something stirred. An agitation began to fade. The liquid swish and clack of blocky air quieted. A perfume of pleasure radiated out into the office, where many still embraced and said sweet things to one another. If any had opened the forbidden door to 312 just then, they would have found it empty, and it would have remained empty no matter how long they stood and stared. Meanwhile, there were homes being built in which to sew people into the walls, the money for which had been won in a competition of presentation and persuasion, but this construction had ceased. The path had shifted. A new world was born from the hug wave. A sustainable form of goodness had taken hold, for the time being anyway, As long as socks rubbed on cheeks felt like infant fur foreheads, and the bakeries were full of orphans, all would be decent at last.